trying to match the points to this function and actually have to figure out the coordinates of those points. So we have our main points, the middle points, our min and max points, and we're going to need to match it up to this function y equals 3 sine 2x. Well, we first of all have to figure out what the amplitude is. The amplitude is equal to 3. We know our period, since that k value is equal to 2, or the b value is equal to 2, we know the period is pi. And knowing that, then we can break down, and the starting point here, a, is at 0, 0. So if we just kind of look at this function like that, okay, we got to figure out what those other points are. Okay, so this is being a sine graph. We know it starts at 0, 0 there, and that's our ending point e. So e is going to be at pi and 0. And if we know that this period is pi, we know that halfway has to be pi over 2, and that's going to be a 0 point. And then we can work out b, d, and f based on the period. Again, the period here is pi, so this 1/4 period should be pi over 4. So point B is going to be pi over 4. Now, since the middle is at 0, we're going to go up using our amplitude of 3, and we end up with a y position of that graph of point B is going to be 3. Okay, so that's going to be the B. We can then do the same thing here. We know this is a quarter period, so we're going to say that we start at pi, we add pi over 4 to get to that point, and we know the y position is going to be 3. So for point D, we can either count backwards a quarter pi, or we can average out pi, half pi, and pi. So the average of half pi and pi is going to be 1.5 divided by 2, or 3/4. 3/4 pi, and then the y coordinate, we use our amplitude to get there. So those are the points for A, B, C, and D. Sorry, D, E, and F. So now we need to change our perspective then if we go into part B. Because part B then is talking about this being a cosine graph, and it says cosine 2x. Okay, so I'm going to do this in a different color. And the coordinates of B here is going to be at 0, 2. So there's our axes. So our starting position is here. We know that our amplitude is equal to 2, and the period is equal to 2 pi. Okay, there's no horizontal compression to this, so it's equal to 2 pi. So I'm just going to start at this point here. That's going to represent one full period. So the coordinate, x coordinate is 2 pi, and the y coordinate is going to be the same as the y coordinate here of 2, or we can use the amplitude over here of 2, and we can say that that y coordinate is 2. I'm going to go to the middle here, because it's right in the middle of 2 pi and 0, so that's 0, that's 2 pi, that's right in the middle, so we know that that position is pi. So the x position is pi, and the y position, well, the amplitude is 2, so it's going to go down 2. It's at a minimum point, so pi negative 2 represents the coordinate of D. I can then start using the quarter period. So the quarter period is pi over 2. So, or I can use the middle. So halfway between 0 and pi is going to be pi over 2, or I can go pi over 2 to get to that point, or backwards pi over 2 to get to that point here. So point C is going to be pi over 2 and y equals 0. Again, that represents a quarter period, so pi over 2 negative, and the y coordinate is 0. And again, we can find halfway between pi and 2 pi, which is 1.5 pi, or we can count backwards 1/4 period, and that period there is, sorry, the 1/4 period is pi over 2, so we end up with the average of 2 pi and 1 pi is going to be 3 pi over 2. That's the x positioning of E, and it's along the x-axis, so it's going to be 0. And then lastly, if we take a look at the last one, C, again, we need to take a different perspective here because it's those, although the shape of the graph is generally the same, how it's been squeezed and stretched is different. So it tells us A has a coordinate of -4 and 0. -4 pi and 0. So that's going to be -4 pi and 0. Okay, so that's not the x-axis, sorry. And the period is going to be based on that k value. So it's a vertical or horizontal expansion. So 4 pi represents the period. So then one period is from A to E. And if that's one period, this must be plus 4 pi, which gets us back to 0. So I'm just going to start with E, and E is at 0, 0. Okay, so that's my period. My amplitude is 1, so I just need to worry about the positions being 1 up or 1 down, or 0 in the middle. I'm going to start with B. Okay, actually I'm going to start with C because I like doing the middle. So here is -4 pi at A, 0 here. This is going to be halfway, so C is going to be 2 pi and 0. And then halfway between -2 pi and -4 pi at A is going to be B, which is -3 pi and 0. So every quadrant is going to be the quarter circle points are going to be pi, because that's going to be a quarter period. So D I can find halfway between -2 and 0, or I can just say, well, I know that's negative pi, and then F must be positive pi and 1. Sorry, this is not 0. D is not 0. D is at 1. Okay, same with B. The y coordinate here is 1. So this is going to be -1, +1 for the maxes, -1 for the min.